The day my grandfather's will was read, I already knew where I stood in my family, somewhere between an afterthought and a joke. Still, I didn't expect what happened next. The law office in downtown Cleveland smelled like leather chairs and old money. The kind of place where people like my father thrived. I sat with my hands folded in my lap, back straight, pretending not to hear the quiet confidence in his breathing. He already knew he'd won. The attorney droned on. Properties, accounts, trusts. My older brother, Logan, received a portfolio so large the lawyer paused just to let it sink in. My aunt smiled like they'd rehearsed it in the mirror. When my father inherited the estate overlooking Lake Erie, he didn't even bother hiding his satisfaction. Then the room went still. The attorney cleared his throat and looked directly at me. "To my granddaughter," he said, "I leave the structure located in the East River Industrial Zone, along with its key." He placed it in my palm, a single rusted key. For a moment no one spoke. Then my father laughed, sharp, dismissive. "A garage?" he said. "That's poetic." Logan leaned over, grinning. "Guess Grandpa knew your level." Heat crawled up my neck. I stared at the key as flakes of rust stained my skin. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried weight no one else could see. I didn't say a word. I didn't cry. I didn't give them the satisfaction. But that night, alone in my cramped apartment on the west side, I couldn't stop staring at it. The laughter replayed in my head, the looks, the certainty that I was nothing. My grandfather had never been careless. Ever. So why this? By midnight, I was driving through empty streets toward the industrial district, the city thinning into shadows and silence. The garage stood where the map said it would, concrete, forgotten, my last name barely visible above a rusted steel door. My hands shook as I slid the key into the lock. When it turned, something inside me did too, and the moment the door opened, I realized one thing with terrifying clarity. There was no way this was just a garage. The door screamed when I forced it open, metal protesting like it hadn't been touched in years. The sound echoed down the empty street, sharp enough to make me flinch. I froze, half expecting someone to shout, to ask what I was doing here. No one did. Inside, the air was thick. Oil, dust, something old and forgotten. I switched on my phone's flashlight, the narrow beam cutting through the darkness in nervous strokes. Cracked concrete stretched beneath my feet. Rusted shelves sagged under the weight of junk that looked untouched for decades. Broken tools. Wooden crates warped with age. A place the world had abandoned. "So, this is it," I muttered. "The joke." For a moment, shame flooded me again. My father's smirk, Logan's laugh. Maybe they were right. Maybe this was all I deserved, a decaying box filled with trash and regret. I took another step inside. The door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, heart hammering, but it was just the wind. Still, my pulse didn't slow. The silence here wasn't empty. It felt watchful, like the building itself was waiting. I moved deeper, each step stirring clouds of dust that made me cough. That's when my light caught something strange at the far wall. Not junk, not decay. A second door, smaller, reinforced, half hidden behind stacked crates like someone didn't want it found by accident. My stomach tightened. This door wasn't rusted like the rest. It was steel, solid, deliberate, and bolted shut. I shoved the crates aside, hands trembling, my breath coming too fast. A brass plaque was screwed into the center of the door. I wiped grime away with my sleeve. My knees nearly gave out. It was a date. My birthday. Cold swept through me, sharper than fear. This wasn't random, this wasn't a mistake. My grandfather hadn't left me a punchline, he'd left me a message. The lock was old, stiff with rust, but it wasn't keyed. It was a combination dial. I stared at it, heart pounding so loud I thought it might echo. Slowly, I turned the numbers: month, day, year. Each click sounded like thunder in the cramped space. Nothing. For one awful second, I thought I'd imagined it all. Then, click. The lock released. I stood there, frozen, my hand hovering over the handle. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to walk away before I uncovered something I couldn't put back. But my grandfather's voice drifted through my memory, calm and certain. Don't fear taking the first step. I pulled the handle. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase descending straight into blackness. Cold air rushed up from below, damp and heavy, carrying the smell of earth and metal. Whatever waited down there wasn't meant for anyone else. And as I stepped onto the first stair, the door behind me slammed shut, sealing me in. The staircase swallowed me one step at a time. Each footfall echoed like I was descending into something alive. The air grew colder, heavier, pressing against my lungs until every breath felt borrowed. When my phone's flashlight flickered, panic clawed up my throat. But then the lights came on by themselves, not fluorescent, not harsh, soft, deliberate. The room revealed itself slowly, as if it wanted me to understand what I was seeing before I believed it. Steel shelves, perfectly aligned, row after row after row. Gold, not coins, not trinkets. Solid bars stacked with obsessive precision, their dull glow reflecting off concrete walls like a trapped sunrise. My knees gave out before my mind caught up. I hit the floor hard, palms scraping against cold cement. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." I crawled closer, touching one bar with trembling fingers. The weight was undeniable, real, crushing, absolute. This wasn't hidden savings. This was a fortune that could erase bloodlines. At the center of the vault stood a small iron table. On it, an envelope. My name written in my grandfather's handwriting. I tore it open with shaking hands. "If you are reading this, you found the vault. What you see is not a reward. It is a responsibility." My chest tightened. "This gold is not yours to keep. Deliver it to the 5 addresses listed on the shelves. Everything has been prepared. I believe in you." The letter slipped from my fingers. A laugh burst out of me, sharp, broken, almost hysterical. "You left me billions," I said aloud, my voice echoing off stone. "Just to tell me I can't have it?" Images flooded my mind without permission. Logan's face when I walked into his office, richer than him. My father choking on his words when I handed him proof he was wrong about me. The life I could buy, respect, safety, silence. I grabbed a bar with both hands. It was heavier than guilt. For the first time in my life, I held power. Real power. Enough to rewrite every insult ever thrown at me. And my grandfather wanted me to give it away. I pressed the gold to my chest, heart racing, temptation roaring like static in my ears. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," I whispered to the empty vault. The gold didn't answer, but his words burned in my mind. "I believe in you." And somehow, that terrified me more than the fortune surrounding me. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes. Hours. Time collapsed inside that vault, bent under the weight of what surrounded me. The gold didn't just sit on the shelves, it pressed in, like it knew what it could do to me. I picked up one bar again, my arms trembled instantly. It was dense, unforgiving, real. Not numbers on a screen, not imaginary wealth. This was power you could feel in your bones. I imagined slipping just one into my backpack. Just one. No one tracked it, no cameras, no witnesses. 1 bar would pay off my student loans, 2 would buy a condo, 5 would erase my father's sneer forever. My breath came fast, shallow. "They'd never know," I said out loud, my voice cracking. "You wouldn't even know." I pictured myself walking into family dinner calm and untouchable, letting them talk down to me one last time, letting them laugh until I set my phone on the table and slid bank statements across like knives. I deserved that, didn't I? My fingers dug into the gold. The cold bit into my palms, grounding me and intoxicating me all at once. For the first time in my life, I wasn't powerless. I wasn't waiting for approval. I wasn't invisible. Then, without warning, a memory cut through the noise. My grandfather on his porch, years ago, no suit, no money, just a weathered chair and a quiet voice. "Being rich doesn't make you strong," he'd said. "Doing the right thing when no one's watching does." My grip loosened. I stared at the bar in my hands, suddenly aware of how badly I wanted it, how easily I could justify keeping it, how fast I'd already started bargaining with my conscience. That scared me more than the vault. My hands shook as I lowered the bar back onto the shelf. The metallic clink echoed like a verdict. Final. Unforgiving. I sank to the floor, pressing my back against the cold concrete, dragging in air like I'd been underwater. "If this is a test," I whispered, "it's cruel." The gold said nothing, but the addresses taped neatly to the shelves did. 5 of them, 5 chances to fail. And as I forced myself to stand, legs weak, heart racing, one truth settled in my chest with terrifying clarity. The hardest part wasn't giving the gold away. It was walking out of that vault without it. I didn't sleep. By dawn, I'd borrowed a truck, loaded the first crate, and driven until the city dissolved into trees and mist. Every mile felt illegal. Every sound made my heart stutter. I checked the mirrors constantly, convinced headlights would appear behind me. They never did. The address led me deep into the mountains. Narrow roads, no cell service, silence so complete it rang. At the end stood a weather-beaten cabin leaning into the trees like it was tired of standing. I knocked. An old man opened the door, thin, sharp-eyed, a cane braced his weight. "You're his granddaughter," he said before I spoke. I nodded. Inside, I opened the crate. He didn't gasp, didn't smile. He just closed his eyes and rested his hand on the gold like it was a gravestone. "He saved my platoon," the man whispered. "Took shrapnel meant for 3 of us. Never told anyone." My throat burned. "He said real men don't collect praise," the man continued. "They collect responsibility." When I left, the cold air felt different. Heavier, honest. Back in the truck, my hands shook, but not from fear, from understanding. 4 addresses remained, and with each mile forward, the gold felt heavier, even though there was less of it. The second address pulled me east. I abandoned the truck outside the city and took the train instead. Less attention, fewer questions. The crate sat beside me, wrapped in tarps and lies. Every jolt of the rails felt like exposure. Every stranger's glance made my pulse spike. By the time the skyline of Boston rose through the window, I hadn't slept in nearly 48 hours. The building at the address was glass and steel, overlooking the harbor, too clean, too modern. The kind of place I'd only ever walked past, never into. The receptionist stiffened when she saw the crate, but one phone call changed everything. I was escorted upstairs to a corner office bathed in gray light. The man waiting for me was in his 60s. Silver hair, calm eyes. He didn't rush, didn't ask questions, just watched me like he already knew how this would end. I opened the crate. For the first time since finding the vault, someone smiled. Not with greed, but recognition. "That's his handwriting on the seal," the man said softly. "Figures he'd make it difficult." He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and slid one toward me, untouched. Your grandfather built everything on promises, not contracts, promises. He handed me a folded note. 5 words, shaky ink. Keep your integrity. Gold is secondary. Something cracked inside me. I wanted to keep some, I admitted, my voice barely holding. Just enough to prove I mattered. He nodded. And that's why he trusted you. When I left, the crate was gone, but the weight wasn't. 3 addresses remained, and for the first time, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding. The gold wasn't testing my honesty. It was stripping me down until only it remained. The 3rd address dragged me south, into heat that felt like punishment. Miles of empty highway baked under a white sky. The truck rattled like it was as tired as I was. My hands ached, my back screamed. I hadn't slept properly in days, surviving on gas station coffee and stubbornness. By the time I reached the nursing home on the outskirts of Tucson, my legs were shaking. The building was small, faded paint, a garden out front fighting to survive the desert. I hauled the crate inside inch by inch, sweat blinding me, lungs burning. A woman with silver-streaked hair rushed toward me, eyes widening the moment she saw the seal. "Oh my God," she whispered. "William never forgot us." Her name was Marilyn. She led me into a common room filled with worn armchairs and slow-moving lives. When she said my grandfather's name out loud, the room went quiet. An old man reached for my hand with fingers that trembled like leaves. "He paid for my wife's medicine," he said. "Never told me who he was." Another woman smiled through tears. Blankets in winter, food when we had nothing. I couldn't breathe. These people didn't know his fortune. They didn't know his name in headlines. They only knew the way help arrived without conditions. I handed Marilyn the documents with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. This was his wish, I managed. That night, I ate dinner with them. Cheap stew, mashed potatoes. Laughter that didn't need money to exist. When I left, the crate was gone. So was something else. The voice in my head that said I was invisible. 2 addresses remained. And for the first time, I wasn't just carrying my grandfather's burden. I was starting to understand his legacy. The final address was back where everything began. Chicago. Cold rain streaked across the windshield as the city rose ahead of me, steel and glass reflecting a sky that looked just as exhausted as I felt. My body was running on fumes. My hands were blistered. My mind was hollowed out by days of temptation, fear, and choice. The Horizon Relief Foundation towered over the street like it had nothing to hide. I dragged the last crate through the lobby, every step echoing too loudly. People stared, security stiffened. One letter, my grandfather's, changed everything. I was ushered upstairs into an office lined with photographs, hospitals, schools, disaster zones, faces caught mid-smile, mid-survival. The director didn't touch the gold right away. He touched the letter. "Your grandfather was one of our quietest founders," he said. "He never wanted his name attached, only results." I opened the crate. No gasp, no greed, just reverence. "This," he said softly, "is the last piece. Scholarships, medical aid, rebuilds, lives he never wanted credit for." My knees nearly gave out. When I walked back into the rain, the truck was empty. So was the vault. I drove without thinking, ending up in the industrial district, rain hammering down as I unlocked the garage for the last time. The basement shelves were bare now, nothing left but concrete and echoes. I sank to the floor, hugging my knees. "It's gone," I whispered, "all of it." The silence pressed in. For the first time since the will was read, I had nothing to hold, and I had never felt more exposed. The basement felt smaller without the gold. Empty shelves loomed like ribs of a carcass, shadows stretching where fortune once glowed. I sat on the cold concrete, soaked from the rain, my clothes clinging to me as if the city itself refused to let go. I laughed, quiet, broken. "So that's it," I whispered, "test complete." I had done everything right, every delivery, every sacrifice. And still, here I was, broke, exhausted, invisible again. The world hadn't cracked open, no applause, no miracle. My chest tightened until breathing hurt. Maybe my father had been right. Maybe goodness didn't change anything. Maybe integrity was just a story rich people told to make loss feel noble. I pressed my forehead to the floor, the concrete biting into my skin. "I gave it all away," I choked, "and I still have nothing." Footsteps echoed above me. I froze. The iron door creaked open, slow and deliberate. A beam of light cut down the staircase, followed by polished shoes and the measured steps of someone who didn't rush. A man in a dark suit descended, silver threaded through his hair, eyes sharp but calm. "Sophia," he said evenly, "I was wondering how long it would take you to come back." I staggered to my feet. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" He set a leather briefcase on the table and met my gaze. "My name is Arthur Hayes. I was your grandfather's private attorney." My heart slammed. "There were 2 lawyers," he continued, "one for appearances, one for truth." The room spun. He opened the briefcase. Inside lay documents, seals, bank statements, deeds. "You weren't being punished," Arthur said softly. "You were being prepared." I shook my head, tears blurring everything. "Prepared for what?" "For the moment you believed you had nothing left," he replied. And then he slid the final envelope toward me. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. I knew my grandfather's handwriting by heart. I'd seen it on birthday cards, postcards from places he never talked about, notes tucked into books he thought I should read. Seeing it now felt like he was standing behind me. "Dear Sophia, if you are reading this, then you chose integrity when no one was watching. That means you passed the only test that mattered." Tears slid down my face before I reached the next line. "The gold was never your inheritance. It was a mirror. I needed you to see who you were when temptation stripped everything else away." Arthur placed documents beside the letter, bank statements, trust papers, property deeds. Numbers blurred as I tried to process them. "Your grandfather created a private trust 12 years ago," Arthur said gently. $10 million, untouched. "It was always meant for you, but only if you proved to yourself that money wouldn't own you." My knees gave out. I sank into the chair, clutching the papers like they might vanish if I let go. "All this time," I whispered. "He was watching?" Arthur nodded. Quietly, he believed the family would break you or reveal you. I covered my face and cried, not from relief alone, but from something deeper. For the first time in my life, someone had trusted me completely, not with money, with choice. When Arthur left, I stayed in the basement a while longer. The shelves were empty, but the space didn't feel hollow anymore. It felt finished. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city lights reflected off wet pavement like stars I'd never noticed before. I stepped out of the garage and locked the door behind me. Not as a joke, not as a burden, but as a chapter closed. My family would never understand what I'd earned. But I did. I wasn't rich because of what I received. I was rich because of what I refused to take.